think about what happens when these odds, the natural odds, think about what happens when these odds with them, when we put them on the team with the Lord. So when you were a kid, you picked teams. Well, I'll take Billy Joe and I'll take Ray. You know what? And what you did is, this is the guy choosing. He picks you. You know what you do? You stand behind him. You get behind him and you feel good because you got picked. You know why you're standing behind him? Because you're on his team. What happens when we take the odds and we put them on the Lord's team? When we put them in a place to where they look different. See, think about the odds when we put them on the Lord's team. So, let me give you an example of this. My cousin, her name's Vicki Young. She's sitting right back there. My cousin, now we grew, she's a little older than me, praise the Lord somebody is, but we grew up, all of us on kind of a same little strip of road, and so I got word from Kathy, my other cousin. She said, Vic's in the hospital. I'm like, what's wrong? She said, well, it's pretty serious. This has been a couple of years ago. So I go to the ICU, not the hospital room, to the ICU. See, she wasn't feeling very well. She just continually wasn't feeling very well. She kept working. She kept going on about life. She kept doing everything that she was normally going to do anyway. She showed up for work. She left. I mean, all this stuff. She was doing all of this right up until the time somebody said, you know what, I'm taking you to the doctor. I'm taking you to the ER. We're not waiting any longer because you have something that's definitely wrong with you. They take her to the hospital and they say, okay, you don't have any blood in your system. Now, she hadn't been bleeding, so that's scary to know. Where's it going? So you don't have any blood in your system. So I go in. I have to be real careful. I go into ICU. She's nervous. She's scared. We pray together. And my friend, who I went to school with, was her nurse. She follows me outside. She says, Steve, I don't know if you understand how bad this is. I'm like, okay, I don't. She said, she shouldn't be here. The odds are against her being here. She should not be here. She should not be alive. I'm just telling you. And I'm just like, okay. She said, well, you don't understand. She don't have any blood in her system. So I called Vicki. I said, give me the particulars. She said, well, they gave me 5 pints of blood, but the insurance company refused a 6th. And I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, why would the insurance company pump you full of 5 pints of blood, but then stop and not give you the 6 pint of blood? And you know what? I couldn't figure that one out until I did the science. I ran the numbers, and it made sense to me. I couldn't figure that out. Why would an insurance company go 5 in but not go 1 more? See, here's the reason why. At 5 pints of blood lost, the body goes into shock. The body goes into a comatose state and non-responsive. So at 5 pints of blood lost, the odds of dying are really, really high. You have maybe just a small percentage of the odds of living. At 6 pints of blood lost, this is what I read medical journals. This is what it said. I'm not making this up. If you lose 6 pints of blood, you are dead. It's exactly what it said. You are dead. So here's why the insurance company refused to approve giving any more blood. It's because they're not in the habit of giving blood transfusions to dead people. So you know what? 5 is all there is. The 1, we're pumping blood into somebody that's not going to live. So let me just explain to you the odds. Now I'm going to explain to you the odds. The odds of Vicki working prior to going to the hospital are 0. The odds are 0, stacked completely against her. Not even a 1% chance. She had a 0% chance that she could be cognate and working and talking and feeling, lethargic and bad. What are the odds of walking on her own strength into the doctor's office or the ER? 0. There's no chance that she should do this. What are the odds of surviving that much blood loss and living? 0. It's not possible. What are the odds of test after test ran on her body to figure out where the blood went, because the first thing they start talking about is cancer. You've got to have something wrong with you because it's going somewhere. No, nothing showed up. 100% great. Everything's wonderful. The test after test, what's the odds of that coming back totally negative? 0. What are the odds of a few days later, her walking out of the hospital just like she walked in? 0. What are the odds of her sitting in service today at Christpoint Church on the back row sitting by my mama? 0. There's a 0 chance. See, every doctor, every scientist, every nurse, every specialist, every mathematician simply said the odds are not in her favor. Even followed me out into the hall and said, Steve, I don't know if you know how serious this is. No, I don't. She shouldn't be here. So, what are the odds that Tom Klingler would get one report that says he has Crohn's disease and another report after God healed him? In the interim, God done something. What are the odds? 0 in the natural. So, what happens when we pull the odds onto the team of the Lord? See, here's the problem, and I'm getting somewhere, and I'm introing, y'all. I'm introing. So, here's the problem. See, here's the problem in society that we live in, and we're just almost like robots. Here's the problem. We're too busy staring at the faint. Now, I'm not talking about a fainting goat or the doctor fainting when he saw the hair on your wife's back. I'm not talking about that kind of faint. I'm talking about an F-E-I-N-T, a feint. A feint is a fake blow. A feint is a distraction. See, in boxing, a boxer may do like this, but he's not really going to throw the punch. And when he does, this guy gets ready for that punch. He does like this, then he comes with the real punch. So a feint is a fake punch. It's a pump fake, then a long bomb downfield. See, a feint is a distraction to keep our eye off the blow. It is a distraction. So the feint is the loss of blood that no one knows where it went. See, I can't, the feint is, you have a loss of blood and you're not going, you obviously have to have something wrong with you. So you have a loss of blood. See, the feint is the disease diagnosis that you got, and all you see is the diagnosis. The feint is the coronavirus threat that it could be. You know what? Yes, it could be. We could have an earthquake too. We could have a tornado, which we had several of those and may have more. You know what? The feint is the fear. The feint is fear, and the devil uses fear. Remember, let's go back. Fear is devil faith. Fear is reality minus God. So the devil wants you to focus on everything that's wrong. He wants us to focus on the feint. See, if he can focus on the feint, if we can get our eyes focusing on the feint, then he'll punch us in the jaw as hard as he can, and see what this is what he wants to do. And I want this. You can quote this one. You can retweet this one. The devil wants you to focus on everything that's wrong instead of the one that's right. This is what he wants you to focus on everything that's wrong instead of focusing on the one that's right. Because see, all it takes is the one that's right to get us to look at things differently. He wants us to focus on the bad the disease can do, rather than the protection that God can give. See, he wants us to focus on the bad parts. See, fear focuses on the what ifs. That's what fear focuses on, the what ifs, the what we can'ts, the how bad the odds are. Faith focuses on the only odds that really matter. Faith says, look, you know what? I don't need good odds. I've got Jesus. You know what? Picture that getting behind that dude. You're proud because he picked you. And you're behind the Lord. Here's my odds. So let's go into Judges chapter 7. Told you we was getting in the Word. So Judges chapter 7, verses 1, 2, and 3. Then, we'll just skip Jerubbaal. We'll go straight. Then Gideon, here's a guy named Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was north of them, the Midianites, by the hill of Morah. The Lord said to Gideon, the people with you are too many. Now, God said this, too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands. In other words, you're going to go into battle. You have too many people, so I can't make this happen because you'll boast over this. So, in verse 3, he says, now therefore proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead. And then 22,000 people returned and left Gideon with 10,000. So let me just kind of break this whole thing down for you. We have the Midianites. We have Gideon. Gideon's not a warrior. Gideon he's not. He became a leader, a powerful leader, but he's not some military guy. So we've got the Midianites. Let me explain something to you. There are 135,000 of these guys, and they're oppressing Israel terribly in the days of the judges. People are hiding in holes and in caves. Literally, Gideon is threshing wheat in a wine press, which is a hole in the ground, hewn out, so he could hide. The only reason he could do that is he would be doing that so he could thresh his wheat in a hole in the ground so the enemy couldn't see him doing it. He's hiding in a hole. So they came against Israel. They oppressed them greatly. They had an army of 135,000. Gideon's army was 32,000. Remember that number because we're coming back to it. Gideon's army was 32,000. So this is what that looks like. We're outnumbered 4-1. We're outnumbered a little more than 4-1. So how do you sell that kind of odds to your team? You know what? You don't have any training. You don't have any weapons. You don't have any history. You don't have anything to even build you can't even build upon your last battle. They're very trained. They're warriors, and you got to whip 4 of them to every one person. And God says, wait a minute, the odds are not where we want them. See, the odds were stacked against them, but God says the odds are not where we want them. It's not good enough. So God does math differently than you and I do math. God does math and multiplication, but He'll back up in order to multiply. You and I just keep thinking addition. So He thinks multiplication. He backs up and He says, hey, if any of y'all are afraid, you can go home. Well, they left. There was no Braveheart thing going on here. They left. 22,000 of them, 2/3 of these guys left. A little more than 2/3. They left them with 10,000. Now the odds are 13-1. Oh, let me back up. I got to correct that. You don't have to beat 4. You don't have 4 of them to your 1. Now you have 13-1. You have to go into battle, and you have to beat 13 of them to every one of you guys. How you feel about that? Let's go. You hurrah. You know, and so the odds were against them. A superior army, well-fed, highly trained, larger. How are we going to go up against that? And God just took 2/3 of us away. But then God says, wait a minute, my multiplication is still not working out. So this is what I want you to do. Gideon, I want you to reduce this army down. God reduced them down to 300 people. Now the odds are 450-1. Now we have 450-1. God says, now I want you to reduce them down. Now that I've got you at 300, the odds are just right. Now I want you to go into battle against 135,000. See, 450-1, and I want you to go into battle against this kind of odds. This is what He gave. He says, okay, well, how are we going to do this? Here's a torch, here's a clay pot, and you have a shout. These are the 3 things you take into battle. You know, I kind of was looking for maybe an AR or, something like that. Maybe a couple of nice, pistols with the pearl grips. I was looking for something like that. I really wasn't looking for a torch and a clay pot. And, shout. I get a horse when I yell a lot. He just told them, this is what you have. You have a torch, you have a clay pot, and you have a shout. No swords, no shields, no horses, no helmets. 300 servants of God blew their horns. They blew their horns. They shouted with everything they had. They busted open their pots, let their light shine, and they witnessed 135,000 men turn on each other, kill each other, run in fear. They chased them down. They executed their kings. 300 people did that because the Lord gave them victory. Now remember the 32,000 that we mentioned? That they started with. Remember the number 300 that they ended with? That number is less than 1% of what it started. 32,000 is 300 is less than 1% of 32,000. They ended with 1%. God did more through Gideon with 1% of himself than Gideon could accomplish with 100% of his own effort. Gideon couldn't have done this. This is a guy that was hiding in a hole in the ground a few days earlier, driven in there by fear. Why was he driven in there by fear? Because the faint The faint. All he could see was 135,000 that they could not win against. Until God gave him 1% chance. When God gave him a 1% chance, everything changed. See, all he could see was his math. You know what I'm talking about. When you figure it up and it don't work, his math, his science, Gideon's calculations, Gideon's 100% of his intellect, he could only still see 135,000 soldiers. They were so thick it looked like you couldn't see the ground. It says it was like the sand on the shore. They had so many. Gideon's science could only see the threat. See, the threat will always see the odds as insurmountable. Can't do it. Just can't do it. But when he became outnumbered 450, only God can do this. Gideon could not see it to the point he was hiding in a hole until God made him outnumbered 450 to 1. When he became outnumbered 450 to 1, then his eyes were open. When he was only left with 1% of God from God, it was more than enough. So I want to show you what happens. His attitude changed when he only had 1% chance. His attitude and his place in history changed when he only had 1%. His level of hope was increased by 1%. So what makes the 1% work so well? What makes the 1% work so well? The science, once again, is in the appetite. The science is in the appetite. 100% hunger for the Lord makes the 1% faith work. So show you this, Isaiah chapter 55. Isaiah chapter 55, been talking this verse for 25 years. Verse 1, come everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and he who has no money, come buy and eat. Just come right on. I mean, how do you do that? How do you buy and how do you eat and how do you come to the table when you have nothing to buy with? Come all who thirst, come all who are hungry. This is what he says, those of you who are hungry, you come and buy. And those of you without money, you come and buy. Well, I don't understand how I buy milk and wine without money and without price. See, here's the thing. The hunger for Jesus is the 1% that becomes more than enough. It's the one thing that we take to the table that makes the 1% work. See, for you and I'm going to break this down and tell you just as simple as I can tell you. For you and I don't care what you have in this world. I don't care what kind of nice clothes. I don't care if you have nice Walmart clothes like I do. I don't care I don't care if you have a super nice vehicle or a whole lot of homes. This is what you ultimately have. You have a torch, a clay pot, and a shout. That's all we possess in this world. Whether Donnell is in surgery right now, he has a torch, a clay pot, and a shout. That's all he has. Because I can promise you he doesn't have a dime on him, he has no money in his pocket, and he's got a nice little gown with the back open. That's all he has. So here's the thing. All we have in this world, we're just like him, is a torch, a clay pot, and a shout. Number one, what covers the light is the clay pot. In us, the clay pot, we have one choice. What covers the light needs to be broken. Because as long as we keep it covered, then our light's not shining. So we have a light, a pot, and a torch. It's our job to break the pot. The pot needs to be broken. Number two, what suppresses the shout needs to be loosed. Gideon said, when you hear me, then you let loose. When you hear me blow my trumpet and shout, you blow your trumpet and shout. You break those clay pots, you let those lights shine, and God took insurmountable odds, gave them a 1% chance of winning, and made them into a vast army that confused the other army. So what suppresses, number two, the shout, needs to be loosed. And number three, 1% of the light of Christ is greater than 135,000 swords. 1% of light from Christ is greater than 135,000 swords. So the devil uses fear as his feint, his distraction. In our lives, we are held, we are holding and being held hostage by a 3 and 100,000% chance. You know, I can honestly say I'm pretty good with math. That's like 0.03 of 1,000% chance. So we are being held to a 3,000 to 1 chance. Hostage. Now let me show you something. I'm going to show you where the real pandemic is. I'm going to show you why the feint is working so well. Because there are 3,141 counties. See, there's the math again. The math doesn't lie. The science doesn't lie. There's 3,141 counties in the United States. 3,141 counties in the entire United States. We would love to think that at least half the population of these counties are Christian. We live in a southern community. You can Google it today, and about half the population in White County will call themselves and identify as a believer in Christ. Whether they walk it or not, I don't know. I would have to say that number's not accurate. But let me show you what the national average is of Christians per population is 18%. 18% of the world, of the country's population identifies as Christian believers in Christ. Let's just bump that up around here to 50. What the heck? Let's bump it up. Let's say it's 50%. We're in holes in the ground, hiding over a threat of 3 in 100,000 when we're losing 1 out of every 2 dying and going to hell. 1 out of every 2 people in our society, right where we live, are dying, eternally separated from Jesus, eternally separated from you, and going to hell. We have no care whatsoever. That is not a problem. That is not a threat, because all we can focus on is the feint. I'd say it's time to come out of our holes. I'm telling you. Now, I'm not talking about coming out of our homes and start shopping again. Walmart's already got enough of your money and my money. If you want to shop, go to your local place. But I'm telling you right now, it's time to come out of our holes and stop looking at the feints. Stop looking at everything that gets our attention. You know what? I think God kind of took some of that away during this time. You know what? There's not a lot of good football on TV. There's not a lot of good golf on TV. There's not a lot of good baseball. That stuff's going to come back, but those are feints. When we're losing 1 out of every 2 people, at best, it may be 4 out of every 5 people that we're losing, and they're dying and going to hell. And you know what? We're not doing anything about it. Not doing anything about it. While we're focused on the lesser odds, the greater odds are stealing our family at an alarming rate. It's a worldwide pandemic. If you want to know what a pandemic looks like, this is one. It's a worldwide pandemic. This is the only pandemic that we're living in right now. I want to show you something. What we're living in right now, it's the only time in history where the healthy have been quarantined. I don't get it. It's the only time in history. I say we stop quarantining the healthy in spirit, and we start taking the healthy in spirit to the weak in spirit. It's time to start getting out of our holes and start finding people and inviting them to a service, inviting them to kneel at an altar, whether it looks like a park bench or lay your fishing rods down, or the workstation. Let's get in the fight. Let's get out of the holes. Hey guys, you were doing this, and you stopped on us, and you watched us, and I appreciate it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending some time with us. I pray that you enjoyed the service today. Let me take this opportunity to invite you out personally. We're located on the square in Sparta. Our service times are at 9 and 11 every Sunday morning. We'll meet you at the door with a hug. We'll meet you at the door with some coffee ready and some donuts if you want. And let me just take a real quick minute to invite you over to our Smithville campus. For those of you who can't drive over to Sparta, drive over to Smithville, 11 o'clock for now, at 614 Murphy Street in Smithville, Tennessee. So one of our campuses, Christpoint Church, we're real people, we're living real lives, and we're serving a real God. Welcome home.